Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Locker Room, our weekly podcast where we shine a light on the Bayou region. I'm Stan Grava. Along with me is Dustin Robichaud, our producer. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Great, Stan.
Beautiful weather.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely.
We say that tongue-in-cheek because it's not been all that great lately, and obviously we got a lot of rain yesterday. The nice thing is we are in basketball season, so that's indoors. The bad thing is we're in soccer season, and that's outdoors, and it's muddy and mucky. Thank God for the artificial turf fields. We're going to get you updated on all of that. Again, we would not inquire. I was going to say inquire. We would hope that you consider subscribing to our podcast, as each Monday we drop here. We try to take a look back at the week before, and we take a look at the week coming up related to sports in the Bayou region on the high school level and sometimes below the high school level. This week we stay on the high school level except for one thing. We are going to talk about the Bayou Region Athletic Hall of Fame, which originated right here at Terrebonne General. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Basketball is now officially at the midpoint. We are sort of on the back end of high school basketball season, so we could get you caught up with some of those teams in our area who are doing well. We'll talk a little bit more about that with Casey. An interesting situation with Terrebonne. Obviously, they took on John Curtis on Friday. That game did not come to a conclusion simply because there was a fight during the game. And we'll talk to Casey a little bit more about what the implications of that would be for Terrebonne High School and for John Curtis, for that matter. So we'll talk a little bit more about basketball again with Casey. Also going to talk about soccer. Soccer is interesting in a perspective that we are now in a situation where a lot of our schools who are perennial powers, we thought it might just be a really tough schedule early on in the year, and they were going to maybe cruise once they got to their districts or playing local teams. And it's not been happening like that. I think we have a lot of parity in high school soccer now in our area, so we'll sort of see how that pans out. A lot of interesting things during the week. Edie White has a terrific girls basketball team. They had to play HL Bourgeois, which was going to be a test. We'll see how they did in that. By the way, they came back strong from that. I will say that just as a little teaser. But one thing we certainly want to mention here at Terrebonne General is we're proud of the inductees of the 2025 Bayou Region Athletic Hall of Fame. That is an event that is put on every year by Terrebonne General Community Sports Institute. And this year we are inducting 6 more inductees. And to that, they will be inducted on June 18th at Cypress Columns, as we do every year at Cypress Columns. And I think there's a little I wouldn't call it misinformation, Dustin, but a little confusion as to
the origin story. What is the origin story, Stan, of the Bayou Region Athletic Hall of Fame?
I'm glad you bring that up because it's very important that we do that, especially after last week. So listen, this is what happened last week. Well, I think we should talk about it a little bit. One of the family members of one of the inductees actually called me after the fact, and he was excited about the family member going into the Hall of Fame. And he mentioned, I've heard of this, but I don't know a lot about it. How does this work? How does this? So I tried to explain to him exactly how it went down. And the confusion is a lot of times they'll say, is it the People's Drugstore, Bayou Region Hall of Fame? Because at one time, People's Drugstore was our big sponsor.
Yes.
Is it the Gulf Coast Orthopedics? Because they're our naming sponsor now. And as I thought about it to explain it to him, the answer is it's the Terrebonne General Community Sports Institute Hall of Fame.
Yes.
A lot of people look at Terrebonne General as a sponsor of the event. They're not a sponsor of the event. They are the event. And what I mean by that is simply this. So you and I were teaching together, right?
Yep.
It was about 2013, I think it was. And while there, believe it or not, we had to do something called duty.
Yeah.
And I was over at one of the lunchtime duties, and there was a young man who was sent to me by another coach at the high school we were at who said, can you talk to this kid? His parents, I really want him to run track for me. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. I don't know if it'll do any good. And I talked to him, and I was telling him that he should run track. He's a terrific athlete. He's got good speed. You should run track. And the kid told me, you can't go anywhere with that. You can't do, nobody goes on from South Terrebonne or Thibodaux High and achieves at this, great level. And I said, no, that's not right. And he said, why is that? So we were at South Terrebonne.
Yes.
And for a lot of you who don't know, great athlete from Houma, Frank Lewis, lives right across from South Terrebonne. He lives in a little subdivision called Presqu'île Isle. And I explained to the kid that house over there has a guy who won 2 Super Bowl rings with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the heyday of Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris and Lynn Swann. And he was like, really? And yeah, from right here in Houma, from right here on the east side of Houma, as a matter of fact. And I think it stunned the kid, and that's when I realized our kids do not know the history of athletes in that area. But I still didn't have the wherewithal to do anything about it. 2 years later, I'm now working at the hospital. I took a job overseeing athletic trainers and sort of had the same conversation with another friend who's actually my age, who said, and his name is Craig Luke. Thanks, Craig. Down in Grand Caillou. He said, Stan, these kids don't know some of the greats that come from this area. And he said, it's too bad we can't do something about it. And actually, when I left there, because I was actually delivering something to those guys down in Grand Caillou, on my way home, I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Let me see if Terrebonne General would be interested in doing more with this. I reach out to Paul Labad, to Mike Fake. We go see Phyllis Peoples, the CEO here, and she said, absolutely.
Yep.
She said, we need to make this a community mission that the people, the newer generations, the youngsters, even the people my age who may not know, never forget. So they sunk the resources into this. Mm-hmm. This is where it comes from. It comes from Terrebonne General doing this. Now, listen, we can't do it without those sponsors. Thank you to Gulf Coast Orthopedics. Thank you to Synergy Bank, to HTB. They've been great all these years. But truthfully, it's Terrebonne General who really has gotten it all done.
It's a great event, Stan.
So I hope I answered your question, too.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget,
Well, the thing is the reason I don't want anybody to forget is because people like you who have to kind of bust your tail on this, people like Team Terrebonne who bust their tail on this, the marketing department at Terrebonne General, the getting in touch with all of these inductees, the videos that go into the inductees. I work pretty hard on that thing, too.
It's a lot of work.
As a member of Terrebonne General. So please realize if it's not for Terrebonne General Community Sports Institute, the thing doesn't happen. So I don't want people to lose sight of that. That being said, it is sort of a labor of love. Sometimes it's more of a labor, and sometimes it's more of love. It's just fun.
Yeah.
At the end of it that night when everybody is very grateful, it's extremely fun.
Yeah.
So again, June 18th at Cypress Columns. More information on how you could get tickets for that are actually going to come in March. They're lining up some things right now, and I have to get together with you and with the powers that be and make sure we get the videos all in, too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And speaking of that, I know a lot of people sitting there going, how about these inductees? What about them? Well, I'm going to ask my good friend Casey to come in, and we're going to talk about each of the 6 inductees right now. And I'm happy to be joined by Casey Gisclair as we are going to talk about the 6 inductees into the Bayou Region Athletic Hall of Fame. Casey and I sort of compare notes every Monday morning on how we're feeling related to the weather and everything. I'm a little sniffly. You doing well?
I'm doing okay. It's about 10, 15 degrees too cold for my liking, but I also understand that 2-3 months from now, I will be killing for those 10 or 15 degrees. So I understand, we're doing fine today, though. We're getting over this gunk that we've been having for the last month or so.
Well, guess what? I'm going to be in Hawaii next week at this time. Well, actually not on Monday, but on Tuesday. So here's my, I don't care. I don't care how cold it gets down here or anything. Let's talk about those 6 inductees, Casey. It was announced last week. We do this every year. This is our 8th induction class going into this. I think we always have great classes. And again, we have another great class for a lot of different reasons. So I'd like you to kind of expand on that a little bit as I introduce each of these people. I'll go in alphabetical order by their last name. The first person is a person you probably see now more than I do related to what he does now. But back in the day, he was a terrific basketball player. Mr. Ernest Brown Sr. Of course, Ernie played at Terrebonne High School. He's a 1975 graduate. Went on to play at LSU after playing. And listen, I will say this. I know my LSU history fairly well. You know it obviously a lot better. But when he played with Rudy Macklin and Greg Cook and Ethan Martin and Jody Holberg, I would venture to say that was as good of an LSU team as you maybe ever had that came out of Baton Rouge and went to the Sweet 16 and actually lost to Michigan State. But now Ernie, who has always been involved in the community, helps with basketball. He's out there officiating. He's got grandchildren who are playing now. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Ernie Brown.
He is such a nice man. And you know, the thing about Mr. Ernie is that until seeing him on, you know, the ballots to be inducted, I didn't even realize that he had this type of a playing career, because he would never let it be known talking about it. You know, he's such a humble man that he always wants to know how you are doing as opposed to anything that he, you know, may be doing. But unbelievable career, great career as a player, great career as a coach, still active now, as you said, as an official. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a voter, and I voted him on my ballot. I think that he's a very deserving recipient, and I'm super happy to see him get his place in the Hall of Fame.
One thing he always would ask is, why me? After, like in the last 2 weeks when he found out he was being inducted. And I said, it's because of community. It's because of those things. It's because of opportunities with young kids. He works with Bobby and them with recreation a little bit too. Very involved man, and we're very happy to have him going in. I did teach and coach with him my first 2 years of teaching over at South Terrebonne. You would have never known he played at LSU with those teams. You would have never known he was a favorite of Dale Brown. To this day, he and Dale Brown still have a relationship, and they're really close. You would never know that he's the guy in the film that we've been showing all week of him being inducted, that he's guarding Magic Johnson for Michigan State, trying to stop Magic Johnson in 1979, which for you folks who are around at that time know was impossible with Michigan State. But yeah, just really, really a good guy. Our next inductee, we're going in alphabetical order, is a guy who was at Thibodaux High before your time. He was at Thibodaux High after my time, and I didn't even know how good this guy was. His name is Mark Davis. Mark Davis is a 1991 graduate of Thibodaux High. He left the area, and I think that's where we lose sight of some of these people when they leave the area. Went on to play at Howard Community College in Texas, became a JUCO All-American, got picked up by Texas Tech, led the first Texas Tech University team to a multiple-win NCAA tournament experience, was the Southwest Conference Player of the Year on defense. And remember, in those days, they didn't have like the Big 12. It was the Southwest Conference. And then got picked up in the NBA in the second round by the Timberwolves and had a nice NBA career. Did you have a recollection of Mark Davis at all?
No, this was one that whenever I saw this on the list of people to vote for, I was like, my God, shame on me. I didn't realize that we had an NBA player that had this level of success from our area. You know, he had a wonderful NBA career. And in doing some research and everything, yeah, he comes right here from the Bayou region, Thibodaux, Louisiana guy. And I think what you said a second ago, that the period of time away from the area, I think, is where we all kind of lost track, lost sight, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But shame on me. I feel bad. I didn't realize we had a local NBA player who did these things, because not only did he play in the NBA, he had success in the NBA and had a really, really good career. So again, another very, very worthy recipient of this Hall of Fame induction.
And a big kudos to a guy named Nathan Pressman, who is from Cleveland, Ohio, because that's the guy who nominated him to be in our Hall of Fame. To think that it wasn't even a local guy who nominated him, you know. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, and the other thing is Mark came in actually for the announcement last week, Mark Davis, and he was very humble. And I didn't know that much about him either. It's kind of nice because the NBA, tell me if you agree with this or don't agree. The NBA is the hardest professional level, I think, to attain for maybe one of our student athletes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that, especially knowing the way that the college circuit is now designed where it's almost impossible as a high school student to get a Division I scholarship, yeah, I would agree. I think that is the most difficult professional league to attain if you're a young person right now.
Well, he's the only one in our area who has ever done it.
Yeah.
Think about that, folks. The only one. Yeah, Larry Wilson was great, but even Larry Wilson, because of injury and stuff, didn't get to play in the NBA. Our next inductee, the godfather of volleyball in our area, Chip Didier, the man. I'll let you take off on Chip a little bit. I know you have a good relationship with Chip.
Sure do. This goes back to whenever I was literally a high school student and I was a volleyball statistician, and watching, his teams over at Terrebonne play and seeing how disciplined they were and seeing how well they played. And, you mentioned the godfather of local volleyball. That's a very good and accurate statement, because if you look at the list of local coaches that we have in the area today, a lot of them are from the Didier coaching tree. And it's either directly as coached as an assistant under him at Terrebonne, or indirectly in that they coach with the Bayou Bandits right now, where they're learning from, Chip in that way. And then through that Bayou Bandits program, oh my God, he's impacted so many student athletes through that. Unbelievable career. People forget that he also had a fairly successful run at the collegiate level as well. So, Mr. Didier, awesome guy. Loves his outdoors now, loves to hunt and fish in addition to the volleyball stuff, but had an unbelievable career and still in many ways is active also. He does a little media stuff here and there, commentating and broadcasting matches, still gives guidance to a lot of the local coaches in the area. So, yeah, 100%. He's had an amazing career and a very, very worthy recipient of his Hall of Fame induction.
Yep, no doubt. Proud to have him going in. In alphabetical order, again, we're going over each of the inductees into the Bayou Region Hall of Fame. And this guy needs no introduction, right? And you could speak from a point of view of being, close to the neighborhood that he grew up in. And Miss Coco, I think, is still down there and stuff. Ed Orgeron obviously won a national championship with LSU, but he's also going in for what he did as a player. He was and I didn't even know this going into all of this, he was, when he was a junior in high school, an all-state offensive lineman. And then his senior year, he was an all-state defensive lineman on the 4A level, which was the highest level in football at that time. Went on to LSU. Things didn't work out. Came home, got re-energized by his father, so to speak, a little bit. Goes back to Northwestern, does extremely well. He actually wins the Joe Delaney Award at Northwestern for Best Defensive Player in his senior year. And then we sort of know the rest, where he's got a national championship at both SC and at Miami as an assistant coach. And then obviously what he did at LSU with maybe the best team that's ever played college football. You're from there. What does it mean to have a guy like Ed Orgeron going in?
Oh man, this one's awesome. I could tell the listeners a true story. The day that he was hired to be the full-time LSU head football coach, I got a text message. It was actually the news. For those of you who remember, the news broke really early in the morning. I believe it was on maybe a Friday or a Saturday. And I got a text at like 5:30 a.m. It woke me up out of sleep, and it said Ed got the job. And I literally started crying. It meant that much to me that a guy from, down the bayou in South Lafourche could hold probably the most powerful position in Louisiana, being LSU's football coach. And then on top of that, too, what I think, given the NIL and the transfer portal and the way that you can't build your teams the same anymore, I think the 2019 LSU football team is forever going to be the best team in college football history. You can't stack up talent like that anymore. So just an unbelievable career. You mentioned the accolades as a player, was a state champion as a South Lafourche Tarpon. To go to Miami and, have build connections with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and all the great Duar and Sapp. To go to USC and have the connections with Pete Carroll. Just an unbelievable career. Obviously, it was his first time on the ballot, and he probably was pretty doggone close to unanimous. Coach O is the real deal, and it's certainly very deserving of his induction.
Yep, big time going in. And I'm glad you mentioned that. First time on the ballot. He and Mark Davis, first time on the ballot, and they went in pretty heavily. Obviously, Coach Orgeron went in very heavily. Our next inductee is a guy I got to know more about probably in the last year and a half than even when he was playing, and that is Michael Parenton. Michael Parenton, a terrific athlete at E.D. White, 2004 graduate, goes on to Tulane for 4 years. He's on their all-conference USA team. That's on the field. But even off the field, he's on the president's list at Tulane for those 4 years. Also, immediately after his time at Tulane, he signed to play with the Jets. He was with that organization in one capacity or another for 3 years, and now actually works in the front office for the Saints. What is your recollection? Because the age there is kind of close, right?
Remember him as a player, yeah. I remember the name and remember the successes that he had there. The part that was surprising to me, did not realize that he was, doing the front office work and everything and still staying involved, which is incredible. I mean, anytime those jobs are so hard to get, those spots are, so difficult and so hard to come by. So the fact that we've got a local guy, had a great playing career. As you mentioned, all of the academic accolades, to be on the president's list at Tulane's incredible. And now to be in the NFL front offices where, we literally have a local guy who's lending a voice maybe towards who the Saints are going to be hiring as their next head coach. I mean, that's amazing. So it's awesome to see. Like I said, remember him as a player, was a terrific student athlete, was not necessarily as privy to all the stuff that he's done since. But it's unbelievable to see how well he's done for himself in his professional career.
Yep, and a really terrific guy. It's hard to get in if you're a lineman, too. So you have to, make all conference teams and things like that, and he certainly did that along his way. Our sixth and final inductee is a man named Merl Schexnaildre. This one, we probably had to give the history behind just a little bit to everybody. Merl Schexnaildre is a 1955 graduate of Terrebonne High School. As Bobby Arson on the background, it's got his pom-poms and his shirt at Terrebonne High School. He was a 4-sport letterman there for 4 years, so obviously he was a great athlete. He signs to go to LSU to play quarterback. But remember, in those days, the old Paul Dietzel days, you played two ways. And you had to play both offensive and defensive positions, and in a game, you just switched over. That's why they had the gold team and the white team. And in 1958, Coach Dietzel started the Chinese Bandits, and they won a national championship, and he was one of those Chinese Bandits. He was more known for his linebacker play than the running back position that he eventually started playing at LSU. He's got a 1958 national championship under his belt. He is 88 years old, lives in Baton Rouge. Now, we were unfortunately not able to see him for the induction announcement, but still, to have somebody with that kind of history that kids and even people my age may have forgotten is kind of nice, right?
100%. This is something that, to me, as a sports, history buff locally, it literally made me smile reading the accolades and knowing, hey, we had a guy from the Bayou region who was part of the Chinese Bandits. That's cool as heck, man. For LSU fans who are maybe a little younger, every time you hear that song in Tiger Stadium after a third down or fourth down stop, it's because of those guys, back in those great teams in the late 1950s. So happy to hear that the Mr. Schexnaildre is still among us. A lot of the members of the Chinese Bandits, unfortunately, no longer are. But yeah, just an incredible history lesson to know that of those great LSU defenses, the original championship team, the first ever championship team, we had a guy from the Bayou region. It's cool as heck, man.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the little song that plays after the stops on defense. That is the Chinese Bandit song. Actually, if you go and look up Google Chinese Bandit, that's what's going to come up.
Yeah.
And it's sort of an homage to these guys back when in the late 50s who played such terrific defense for LSU, right?
100%. And it's like I said, it's really cool to know that there was one of the members that's from this area. And frankly, how cool is that history lives on, knowing that song is going to be forever part of LSU lore. I play the video game. When you get a stop on the video game, the song plays. It's so cool to know that all of that is based on what those men were doing literally in the 1950s.
Very good. So there's your inductees: Ernie Brown, Mark Davis, Chip Didier, Michael Parenton, Ed Orgeron, Merl Schexnaildre. Congratulations to all of them. June 18th, we'll have more ticket information later. Around March is when it really gets out there. So we'll let everybody know if they are interested in going to the induction ceremony in June. exactly how they can go about that. Shifting gears just a little bit, don't have a whole lot of time left, but we do want to talk a little bit about basketball. Basketball is, I would love to say it's hot and heavy in our district races, but the fact is, and I think this is another thing that a lot of people in our area don't know, most of our districts only play one round. And they probably wouldn't even play the one round if they had a vote on it, but they play one round. So we're not hot and heavy into district races, but we are past the midway point in basketball. And things are still, it's almost like we've been talking the last 3 weeks. It's kind of that steady. Things are still going good for certain teams. When you talk about the boys, South Lafourche is still rolling, still doing really well in 4A. Probably as we go forward, we'll start to look at the PowerPoint rankings. I didn't want to do that too early because I didn't want it to be misleading. But now I think we're starting to get solidified in that a little bit. Vanderbilt's boys starting to come to the top a little bit. Terrebonne. So Terrebonne plays John Curtis on Friday. Unfortunately, what you never want to see happens, and there's a fight during the game. They stop it early. John Curtis, truthfully, had the game in hand. I've been getting the question all weekend, what happens in that situation? Do you know? I don't want you to answer something that you're not privy of, but do you know, well, one, what happened on Friday, and two, what might be the consequences of that?
Yeah, so let's talk about the first part in terms of what happened. John Curtis had the lead, as you said. They were just kind of icing down the game in the second half, and an unfortunate situation where, from what I understand, and I was not there in person, but from what I've been told by several people, a Terrebonne player struck a John Curtis player during, I don't know, maybe a rush for a loose ball, whatever it may be, but Terrebonne player struck a John Curtis player, which then led to both benches clearing, and, that's usually a big no-no with the LHSAA. So from there, the officials got everybody back into their respective corners and said, hey, look, we're not going to finish this game. No, we're going to just put a pin in it right here. So that's where that stands. Now, in terms of what happens next, that's where things get dicey for Terrebonne and maybe even also, frankly, for John Curtis. The LHSAA has come out several times in the last 2-3 years and said, we're not going to tolerate stuff like this. I mean, this is something that's not going to happen under our watch. So they're going to do their due diligence. I'm sure they've already opened up an investigation, and they're going to see video, and they're going to get all the different things, try to see who did what. And I would say, this is Casey Gisclair saying this is not Eddie Bonine saying this, I would say it's pretty likely that Terrebonne and probably John Curtis also are going to see some sort of a reprimand, be it, maybe not able to play for a couple weeks or whatever it may be. I think it would be very unlikely that we would see Terrebonne play for the next couple weeks.
I have heard that the LHSAA has a zero tolerance policy now, and that if a game is stopped early, something is going to happen to somebody. Yeah. There's going to be a consequence. The one thing that I think is enlightening to me is it never, although it got out of hand, don't get me wrong. I mean, if both benches are clearing, it never got into an ugly fight scene, right?
No. The bench is cleared, but it wasn't like the guys on the benches fighting the other guy. No, it was those guys running on the court and just kind of pulling everybody away. But you mentioned the key word, zero tolerance, man. It would be very, very unusual for nothing to be done to either team. But we'll see. I think it would be increasingly likely that we would see both Terrebonne and John Curtis not able to play for the next week or so.
Well, kudos to the officials for doing what they did and making sure that they got, sort of in it before it got too bad. And again, the game really was out of hand score-wise at that point anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, the Tarpons got a big win over Pearl River. Was that like one that you smiling at, or like, you know what? I'm not sure we found out anything new about the Tarpons.
Oh no, man! Hey, look, Pearl River's pretty good. They came in with a winning record. And the thing that I think is pleasing to a lot of the people from the South Lafourche perspective is, from their side of things, they don't feel like they played very well, and they still were able to win by 20+ points. They are developing depth. They had, I think, 4 or 5 guys in double figures, and it's just crazy what happens when kids start to believe, man. This is the same group of guys who won 8-9 games last year. This year, new coaching staff, new confidence, another year of seasoning, and they're 12-1. And when you look at their schedule, and what they have coming up. Brian and I were doing this math the other day. It's very realistic that they could finish the regular season like 24-3 or something like that. Like they are set up to have an amazing season. Kudos to Coach Keegan Pokey. Kudos to his guys. And Stan, you know how it works down here down the Bayou. When there's a good team, the community rallies around that good team. The tank was packed on Friday. That creates an unbelievable home court advantage. CCA is going to have to deal with that home court advantage tonight when they come down the Bayou.
Real quickly, Terrebonne is above 500. They're 2 games above 500. HL Bourgeois game above 500. South Lafourche, as we mentioned, now sitting at 12-1. Vanderbilt 14-5. Watch out for the Terriers. Eleanor 10-7. They're right there. Homer Christian 8-4. Not the hardest of schedules, but still for where they played, they're doing the right things and getting some wins. So that's your boys' teams that you got to watch out for. Terrebonne's girls still rolling, man. They're 18-3. We keep on waiting to see when it might be a step backwards, and they're not, and they're playing pretty good competition.
Yeah, that ain't coming. That step back is not happening. You look at some of the results that they've been having. The beginning of the year, it was crazy. They were kind of like eking out some games against not the best competition. Now they're blowing people out. Like those girls are starting to believe, that drop in or that little lull that we've all been kind of waiting on, that ain't coming, man. They're for real.
Yeah, HL Bourgeois is a team, too, that we sort of got to watch out for. Let me go to Thibodaux first. Thibodaux's 11-5. We know that Ashley's going to have those girls playing well, but I'm going to combine the HL Bourgeois story with E.D. White. E.D. White really good, but E.D. White has to play HL Bourgeois last week and turned into a game where it's the first time we see HL Bourgeois and say, kind of flexing their muscles in that one, right?
100%. That was a great result for Coach Anderson and his ladies. They go on the road, they take down E.D. White and get a big win, kind of setting the stage for tonight. I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this after the fact, but Bourgeois is taking on Vanderbilt tonight. So they have a chance to now even showcase themselves even further. And the rumors and the whispers stand, and I don't think she's playing tonight, but the rumors and the whispers are Michaela Charles has been cleared, and very shortly she will be making her season debut. So how about that? Team that maybe already is the best team in our area adds an all-state player to their lineup in the next couple of weeks.
You know, it's kind of interesting. HL Bourgeois, who had a lesser record, was taking on E.D. White last week, who had a sparkling record, and they came out and they played well. Tonight, it's HL Bourgeois, who probably has the better record against Vanderbilt, who has maybe not the sparkling record, but Vanderbilt we know is very good. They're 7-6 right now, but if you tell me Michaela Charles is going to play too, it's sort of the rich keep on getting richer, so we'll see how that one turns out. Listen, South Terrebonne is above 500 at 9-6. I ain't going to lie. After 15 games, if you'd have told me South Terrebonne was above 500, I would have gave you my firstborn. So they're obviously doing some things right there. And I know they have a good little group of young ladies there, too. Let me see. Anybody else in 8-5A? Assumption 7-10, and it's a good 7-10. But there's some things that have to happen. South Lafourche is at 7-9 right now. I keep on thinking they're going to gain a little traction, but I haven't seen it happen yet.
So is South Lafourche. They're missing their best player. Nyla Lyons has been out for the last, month plus with an injury. I'm told that she also, I could tell you firsthand, she's out of the boot. So that's good news. She's not walking with a limp. She's nearing getting back to the lineup. And she's a big-time player, man. I mean, think of the impact of like a Brandon Daniels had a couple years ago. She's that type of player. When she gets back into the lineup, that team's going to drastically get better.
Very good. Homer Christian is actually 5-1. Not a real stiff, competitive schedule, but I think that Jamar kind of knew he had to do it that way to sort of build up some momentum as their program is really, after 2 years, taking baby steps, right?
Sure, and Coach Celestine would be the first to tell you, after Coach Luke was removed as the head coach there, they had to go and find players. And what I mean by find players, like they had to go get girls like, hey, you've never played basketball before, you want to play? Sign up. They had to, in many cases, teach the young ladies how to play. So they are scheduling light. They are scheduling not as many games because they want to have time on the practice floor. But what's incredible about Homer Christian School is even through those obstacles, they made the second round of the playoffs last year. And I would be surprised if they don't do that or even better this year, because they have developed the skills of the ladies, and Coach Celestine and his staff are doing an outstanding job there.
Very good. CCA is actually at 6-6. Central Catholic a little bit better at 14-7. We're going to keep you updated with basketball. We're going to take a little bit more of a delve into soccer when we could sort of figure things out. We know Central Lafourche is really good in soccer, both boys and girls programs. The one thing I think we may have been a little mistaken on, we keep telling you how Vanderbilt and E.D. White play a really tough schedule, but now we're seeing E.D. White and Vanderbilt playing some of our local public schools and either struggling or not always getting the win. So I would ask you this, and this will be my last question until you sort of for our show today. Is it a deal where you think all of our schools are rising to the level of Vanderbilt and E.D. White, or maybe E.D. White and Vanderbilt being a little bit lesser than they were in the past? Or is it just a combination of all of those things?
That it's a little bit of both. Our public school teams have no doubt gotten better. And then Vanderbilt and E.D. White this year probably aren't their strongest teams that they've had in the last decade or so. But the work that our public school teams has done is incredible. I mean, I go back 20 years whenever I was a high school student. Vanderbilt would beat everybody in the public school ranks, 10, 12, nothing. I mean, it was not even a contest. That's not the case anymore. And that's a testament to a couple of things. That's a testament to, the great youth work that's being done in our area. We talked about that last time. I think that's also a testament to, a growth in the Hispanic population in our area. Quite frankly, we see it down the Bayou at South Lafourche that there are a lot of Hispanic kids that are playing at younger ages to where that's their number one sport. I mean, that's the sport that they grew up wanting to play. So there's a whole lot more talent. It's awesome to see. And I think that we've got a lot of people, or a lot of teams rather, that, as we said, are going to make the playoffs. And I think are going to make noise once they're in the playoffs.
Agree. Before we sign off real quick, HL Bourgeois boys are 11-5-2. When you look in Division 3, you have Morgan City, who's actually leading the division right now over Vanderbilt and E.D. White. Now, listen, there's more to play, but we want to make sure we get that out there. Central Lafourche in Division 2 is 14-4-4 overall. They're having a great year. Girls side of things, Thibodaux girls are really good. They have 13 wins on the year to this point. HL Bourgeois 10-8. John Hebert always does a good job at Terrebonne. They're 11-8. Central Lafourche's girls are 12-4-4. So they're a team to look out for. We're going to keep up with soccer as we really get towards the playoffs and let you know how our teams do. But I kept you way too long. We always say, hey, can you give me 15 minutes, Casey? And now I'm looking, we're at 29 minutes. So a little bit to it. But listen, thank you for everything. Again, our Hall of Fame is going to be on June 18th. We hope that you all can come out there. We think we have a great class. Thank you for taking the time to vote in that thing, and we really look forward to it.
No doubt. My pleasure. And hey, look, before we go, wanted to let everybody know this time next week when we do this again, it's very likely that we will be talking about a new Thibodaux High School football coach. I understand that that's pretty much any day now. So for the listeners wondering, I think that we're going to get a coach hired sometime this week. And I'm sure you and I next week will be able to break that down and discuss the hire that they're going to make there.
Great teaser. Great teaser.
There you go.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a terrific week.
You too, man.
Again, always good to talk to Casey and glad to get his insight on those 6 inductees into the Hall of Fame. Basketball and soccer going on hot and heavy. Go out and support those kids. This week, I'm very fortunate, going to go to a signing for Brennan Champon over at CCA. Brennan, a terrific baseball player for the Lions, is going to sign to play at Baton Rouge Community College. So on Wednesday, I'll be there. Hope to get a little footage of that for you in the future because we want to expose our kids who are playing at the next level so that it sort of sets an example, sort of like our Hall of Fame. It sets an example for all of you out there that you have possibilities to play on the next level. So congratulations to Brennan for sure. To you, thanks. I am out on vacation. We may put something in the can for you folks next week, but I am out. So whatever we do next week will sort of be something just to kind of inform you and keep you updated. Make sense?
Makes sense to me, Stan.
That's it. Take care, everybody. Hope you have fun. Aloha.